Okay, are we together? Are we sure we're together? Okay, we are going next to the next item. To take us on the welcome remark, I'm calling on Sandra Vemuti Alonge, the head of program GIZ ZME Nigeria. Please let's appreciate her.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this first webinar in a new series that we are launching today. We're really honored to have you here with us as the participants, but of course also our esteemed speakers. We're looking forward to a very interesting session. The Nigerian-German Center is an initiative by the German Development Agency GIZ in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment. You see here the Migrant Resource Centre. Migrant Resource Centre are currently based in Abuja, Lagos, and Benin City, and the MRCs are the place where you can get advice on migration and employment opportunities, where you can get advice on how to start up your business, and also get career counseling and referrals to many opportunities out there that are being provided through our program, but also in collaboration with many other partners. So our general aim is to provide people with better advice in terms of what the opportunities are out there in the labor markets, both in Nigeria, the region, and beyond. And in our mission to provide people with more information, more and better information, we thought it would be apt to start this series, series of webinars. What we're doing today is not just for the benefit of those here in the room today and those online. I mean, this program will also be recorded, will be made available on different social media platforms, including those, of course, of the Migrant Resource Centre. And of course, it will be used in future trainings and information sessions that we hold across the 3 locations and in neighboring states. So without much further ado, I would like to hand the mic back to our wonderful moderator, Blessing, thanking you once more for your participation, and we look forward to an interesting session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please, let's clap. All right, thank you so much, Sandra. Because you know why I said we should clap? We really need to appreciate GIZ for this initiative, honestly. Because like Sandra has said, when it comes to information about migration, most young people in Nigeria job migration, do not have, that kind of information. But you see some people also do the irregular one, and which is where the problem is. So like I said, there is no better time to have this webinar than now. So let's appreciate GIZ again and appreciate Sandra. Okay, to give us a goodwill message is Comrade Ismail Bello, Deputy General Secretary, Nigeria Labour Congress. Okay, sir.
Well, let me start with a bit of protocol to thank Madam Sandra and her team, Wally of GIZ, for putting this together. And as we are doing the round of introduction, I also heard that the Federal Ministry of Labor is here, because when we are discussing issues about people's movement, it's important to bring critical stakeholders on board. And that will include government, organizations like our own, the Nigerian Labour Congress, and I can hear a lot of civil society actors also in the room, because we are discussing about people. And it's in that light that I want to make a few comments, and also to let you know what we do as NSC and the kind of support that we get from GIZ and also the International Labour Organization. When we talk about migration and migrant workers, most often I hope people's attention are not drawn to the upper scale people, the doctors, the engineers, and other professionals in that cadre. We are also talking of people, artisans, skilled workers, who also want to move to other places. And that's why she kept saying that this cannot be coming at a more appropriate time than now, because the question of migration for work is also being fueled by quite a number of factors. The challenging economic environment at home, global crisis and conflicts in many countries around the world, and people are looking for opportunities to be able to move. So it's important that we are discussing this and we are looking for what is the best way to guarantee people's well-being, what is the best way to guarantee that people earn decent income, what is the best way to ensure that wherever people are, the common humanity, common dignity that every worker should have, that worker has it. Whether you are in Nigeria, whether you are in Germany, whether in the United States. But most often, when we even talk about migration, people's mind goes to America, people's mind goes to Europe. We also forget that within the African continent, there's a lot of movement also within the continent. In fact, record shows that more than 50% of people who are immigrating, who are leaving the country, are actually moving within the African continent. But what is important, and why we are here today, is to look at what are those opportunities for them to ensure that they have guaranteed well-being. And there are several, on the international scene, there are several UN provisions, UN conventions, and particularly for the ILO, the question of fundamental principles and right at work, and also the notion of decent work, should go with workers wherever they are. And as NSC, we've done quite a lot with the support of our partners to ensure that the right of workers are put on the table when we are discussing migration. I will just do a quick rundown of some of the things that we've done. We've done capacitation for our affiliate unions. When I talk about affiliate unions, I'm talking about unions in the different sectors. Okay. I'm talking of unions. Okay. I'm talking of unions in the different sectors of the economy, in the informal sector, in the energy sector, wherever those unions are. We've tried to reach out to them and talk to them about migration cycle. We've also, like I said, built the capacity of our unions about people who work abroad who also want to return home to ensure smooth reintegration of migrant workers. We've trained journalists to be able to popularize some of the work that we are doing. The NSC has worked with partners to also have a migration policy to guide our affiliates. We've also had interface with several countries of destination to improve protection and safe return for migrant workers. If I'm not mistaken, I think there is a bilateral with some unions in Bahrain with regards to safe return for migrant workers. Because sometimes when you go, you work for a while, you want to return, or you work and you are not even sure of your well-being, and you should have the opportunity to return back to your destination. We've also signed, like I said, we've signed a memorandum of understanding with General Federation of Bahrain Trade Unions on the protection of human and labor rights. We carry out rallies and campaigns with respect to the rights of migrant workers. And very important, as we talk about the right of migrant workers who are leaving the country, we must also be able, as a union, talk about the right of migrant workers who are working in Nigeria. And I was just discussing with Madam Sandra that I came in contact with NILES in Lagos because we had issues with some migrants from West African region who are working in the Kampala, the Batik sector in Lagos. They are from Gambia, they're from Senegal, they're from Guinea, and they are working. And they face all kind of harassment from immigration and all of that. So we are, as a union, but luckily also, they are members of the union. Again, an important area of protection, because you can't talk about decent work without that respect for workers' rights, and with respect to collective bargaining and the freedom of association. Because these categories of workers, they are not Nigerians, but because they are in the union is able to look for the institutions that will be able to help them, guarantee them the basic right as workers, and also help them resolve whatever challenges they may have with immigration. So those are the kind of things that we do at the level of the union. But very important, wherever workers go, it's important that workers are able to have access to basic rights, and workers are able to have access to fair wages. An important area also about migration is also about the obstacles around movement, and what role can unions play to ensure that people move in the right way to avoid illegal migration and the consequences and the challenges that come with them. We must also thank GIZ for not just being involved in this area, but also capacitating people and talking about skills, because you can't be a good worker without the necessary skills. So that's also an important component of the work that GIZ do, that we as unions are also very interested in ensuring that people build capacity to be able to move and work in an atmosphere of decent work. I wish you a very successful deliberation, and I will also sit back, listen to our guest lecturer, Comrade Owei Lakemfa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, comrade. You know, when you see or listen to comrade speak, they have a lot of energy. Please, let's appreciate Comrade Ismail again. All right, thank you so much for that good message. Straight to invite the presentation, the lead presentation for the day is Comrade Owei Lakemfa. Please, let's appreciate him. He's the former Acting General Secretary, Nigeria Labour Congress, that's the NLC, and also Organization of African Trade Union, African Trade Unity. You are welcome, sir. So he's going to take us on the first presentation for the day, and I want to implore you to listen carefully. Listen and listen and listen, so that during the Q&A, you'll be able to also engage the process, because we want this to be very interactive. All right.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I will also stand on existing protocol. The problem with that is that when the protocols are too many and too heavy, what to stand on may just collapse. So sometimes I just side with existing protocol. We are all human beings. If you move from one part of Nigeria to another to stay, you are taking part in some form of migration or the other. You don't agree with me? So a migrant is a person who changes his usual country of residence irrespective of his legal status. Because there are people who say, okay, these are legal migrants, these are illegal ones. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that the person has moved. But there are three basic types of migration. You have the one I've just talked about, which is internal migration. Then you have the external migration, which is the one you cross borders. Now, the UN defines a migrant as any person who is moving or has moved across an international border or within a state, away from his or her habitual place of residence, regardless of the person's legal status or why you have moved in the first place. Now, there is a third one, when the person emigrates from one country to another to live in another country. That's the third one. But basically, the two basic ones are what I've talked about: internal migration and external migration. And if you know Nigeria very well, you find that there are some cities that were built more or less by this internal migration, like Jos, because they are thin, you had like Enugu. So now the reason for movement, for migration, can be varied. Some for religious purposes, some for political purposes. But the one we're talking about is the migrant worker. And the ILO says that a migrant worker is a person who is to be engaged or is engaged or has been engaged in a remunerated activity in the state of which he or she is not a national. Now, with looking at the various laws and conventions and regulations that affect the migrant worker, for me, the most basic is the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I hope we are aware about those rights, you know. So now within those rights, you'll find that you have a right to life, a right to live where the country you are, It guarantees peaceful assembly that we can come together like we are now. It also guarantees free choice of employment, so you are not forced to to do a particular work. There's also the issue about discrimination, that you cannot be discriminated against for whatever reason. And you have to have equal pay for equal work done. So these are some of the things that you find in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But there are some others also. For instance, there is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So, talking about the right of workers to life, the right to family life, and that if you're a migrant worker, you cannot be tortured. You cannot be forced to do other jobs. And pro-war propaganda is also forbidden, because at the end of the day, human beings that need peace. Convention. International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Now, this convention guarantees all peoples the right to self-determination, to economic rights, and most importantly, to be free from hunger. Because you have to be free from hunger. Otherwise, there will be problem anywhere. Even your stomach will quarrel with you. Now, that convention also equally guarantees respect for liberty to decide what can be done with their children in their country. It also guarantees participation in cultural rights, life, enjoyment of scientific benefits. You know, these benefits are all over scientific, you know. We talk about 5G. That's a scientific, you know, development which you should all benefit. And then they said that, you know, we have another higher, you know, G10, whatever. Whatever the case, once there's an improvement or some discovery in science, it should just be universal and everybody should belong to it. Now, that convention also guarantees equal rights and the rights, you know, to employment. But particularly, it says that human beings have rights to food, adequate food, to clothing, to housing, continuous improvement, because life is always moving. So you must be able to develop. For instance, you cannot have GSM and then you see go back and you are forced to stay with the analog system. Some of us are analog people, given our age, but we try to go on with the Gen Zs. I remember very well that I used to be a mobilizer and organizer in the NLC in those days. And I thought I was a father of organizing until I saw the answers. And I had to go back to some of those guys to say, how did you do it? Because they're always teaching us. Now, the main thing about the ILO is about workers. And we have a core convention, we have core conventions of the ILO. The ILO has conventions on forced labor, which was in 1930. Don't forget that the ILO was established in 1919, you know, to protect labor. So you have the forced labor convention, you have the freedom of association convention, you have the right to organize, you have the right to collective bargaining, even if you are not in your country. And there is also the Convention on Equal Remuneration. Okay, thank you very much. There's a minimum wage 1973 convention. You know minimum wage. Minimum wage is usually a level below which people should not be paid, so that there will be some standard. This is different from living wage. Living wage is the one that takes the worker to the office, and from the office to the bus stop, and the bus stop back home, and he sits down to a meal with his family. That can take you, he can take you to the office. We are not sure whether I can take you to the bus stop, but we are not sure I can take you home. That's the difference about minimum wage. Then there is a migrant workers and members of their family convention 1990. We have convention against the worst forms of child labor, because you have child labor and the people are not supposed to workers. Now there is a migration for employment convention also. These are things that maybe if you get the paper, you can just go back and check through. So I'm trying to run because I have 15 minutes. So I also want to ensure that you also know labor laws that affect us all. Of course, the most basic of these laws is the Nigerian Constitution. That's the main thing. If you read the Nigerian Constitution, you know that you have a rights under the Constitution. The Constitution, for example, says that it guarantees every citizen the equality of rights, obligation before the law, that you have as a human being, you have that has to be protected. Our Constitution says that you have a right to social life. It provides for health, safety, and welfare. Our Constitution says also that equal salary for equal pay, and there can be no discrimination on any basis. It says, for instance, under Section 40, that you have a fundamental right to assemble, including to form trade unions. It's a fundamental right. It also says you have a fundamental right to belong to multiple parties. No problem. Yeah, so it gives also you the right to your beliefs, whatever they are. It doesn't matter. So whatever religion you want to belong to, you have a right to belong to that. And then you have a right to move freely around the country so that no policeman can say, where are you going? You know, when I was younger, in those days, if you are found in some places in Nigeria, like Ikoyi, you'll be questioned, why are you roaming around? You know, and there was a crime. It was a crime to wander. Even when the state did not give you a job, if you are found wandering, you went to jail. But all those ones have now been overtaken. But talking about labor, the major law about labor in Nigeria is the Labor Act, which provides for particular conditions under which people can be employed. If you are employed in Nigeria, your employer has a duty to give you a letter stating who he is, the kind of work you should do, your own address, stating your salary, and things like you have rights to paid leave, you have right to maternity leave. So if you're a lady that is employed somewhere and you become pregnant, you have a right to go and give birth. Not in the factory. You have the right to go and give birth in the hospital and to take care of your child after that. So it's called a paid leave, you know. And if you are recruiting Nigerians, you have to ensure that the families also have a right to follow them. I mean, a worker, whether it's a male or a female, is not just a worker. It's also a human being with family rights. And so the Labor Act tries to ensure that you can also move with your family and that you also have a right, which is very important, to come back to Nigeria. So they will not say because you are working outside, you cannot then come back to the country. So we have those kind of rights under the Labor Act. We also have national policy on labor migration, which provides a national framework to regulate labor migration. The problem we've had in Nigeria, which I later talked about also, it's not because we don't have those laws. Those laws are there. If you follow those laws, then there'll be no problem about anybody being kidnapped or abducted in Burkina Faso or in Ghana or in Libya. But because people do not follow those laws, and the recruiters who are getting Nigerians to work outside do not have licenses. So everything is done illegally. And so when you then go to those countries, if you didn't follow the procedure, you more or less become a slave. And that's part of the problems that we have. I'm sure this paper is going to be available to you, and you go through all these things. There's also the Nigerian Immigration Act, under which, the immigration decides especially how you can come into Nigeria and what work you can do. And it also says that even if you are a Nigerian working outside and you have a written agreement and you are shortchanged, it's possible for you to come to Nigeria and try to assert your rights. The Nigerian government has a duty to do that, not just to abandon anybody. Now, like I said, most of the problems that we have is that we are not going through laws, we are not going through regulations, we are not going through procedures. And so a lot of Nigerians simply go. When you go to the airport, for instance, Nnamdi Azikiwe or Lagos, you find a lot of young girls just going out in droves, either to Saudi Arabia or UAE and co. And then they go there as domestic servants. There, then they are then deprived of their basic rights. They are virtually not human beings. A lot of them, if the boss can come, it used to be slavery in US in those days. In those days, when the farmer is tired and he wants to retire, and after his wife has gone to sleep, he can then go to any of the female quarters and just take his go. That was in colonial times and times of slavery, but it's happening today. A lot of Nigerian domestic servants are at the mercy of their masters, and they get pregnant. And when they become pregnant, you cannot then complain, because in the first place, the employer is holding your passport, so you cannot even run. So those are some of the problems that we have, which Nigeria has to look into, to say that, look, we must follow rules, we must follow laws. And Mr. Bello was talking about high-skilled workers, like doctors. We have about 20,000 of them in US alone. You know, like academics, we have over 10,000 of them. So the problem is not about rules and regulations. It is how we're able to control them. And now our embassies, they look out for our own rights and protect them. How the various agencies of government also look out for our rights and protect. In any case, if you have all the protection in the world, and then you go to a country like Libya or Afghanistan, and there is war in Sudan, you have to be evacuated. These are the things that the embassies do. And we also have various agencies in Nigeria, like NAPTIP, talking about to ensure that human trafficking is eradicated, because a lot of Nigerians are, they are told they are going to be employed. They will have documentation only for getting to get to those countries, and they are forced into prostitution. You have a body like the Nigerian Diaspora Commission, NITCOM, that has also helped, the case of Nigerians abroad. I'll just round up by saying that what the United Nations has done has been to bring all those major laws together to have what you call a pact amongst countries, which you can then, rely on. So no matter what part of the world you are, whether you are in Nigeria, outside Nigeria, anyway, you can then rely on these United Nations, laws and conventions. Thank you very much. I hope I've not overshot the runway. Thank you.
Please, let's appreciate Comrade. This guy, you can do better. All right. Thank you so much, Comrade, for that beautiful insight. I know there is a lot to talk about, and because of time, so we'll just take some few questions before we go into the Q&A from participants. So I just want you to also maybe throw more light on the common challenges that Nigerian migrants face in assessing their rights in foreign countries, because you've said a lot of things around people when they go, they seize their passports and all of that. So it will also be good for us to understand the challenges they face in terms of assessing their rights when they are in those countries. Thank you.
Well, a lot of problems come because of what you call irregular migration. A doctor that has been invited to the US, for instance, or any country, if he thinks he's not being well taken care of, he's like to have the means or the ability to live. But if you enter a country and there's even no record that you are there as a human being, then it becomes very difficult. And that is why some of us have advocated with the foreign ministry that at least in various countries, leave aside whether the Nigerian there is there legally or not, do a census of all Nigerians and their families living in those countries, all of them, so that we'll be able to track them, because some of them left Nigeria without such basic documentation. You get it? When somebody goes to one country, assuming you go to Ghana, and then from Ghana you cross to Burkina Faso, the Nigerian embassy will not know you are there. Meanwhile, there are a lot of terrible things that happen in those countries to migrants. And so what we've suggested to, some of us have suggested to Foreign Ministry, is do a census of Nigerians. In fact, try to organize groups or association of Nigerians. Say Nigerians living in Ghana. You get it? You can then become, whether you are selling clothes or you are selling, no. But important thing is, let's have a census of everybody. Possibly the names and qualifications of those people. Because families are there with children, you don't know what qualification they have. You don't even know whether they are going to school or not. So perhaps if we do that, it might be easier. And in terms of emergency, once you have that kind of register and the addresses and phone numbers, you can easily get people together and move them out.
In terms of when it comes to Nigerian embassy, because the truth is that we have embassies in almost all the countries, but when it comes to their roles, most times people don't really understand what the roles. We just tend to hear ambassador, Nigerian ambassador to Italy, Nigerian ambassador to USA as it were. But most times people don't really know what the exact roles of these ambassadors are, and also the roles of the consulates and ambassadors. What role are they playing in protecting the rights under international or local laws, as it were?
Okay, thank you very much. Who is the president of Nigeria? Does everybody know?
Who is the president of Nigeria?
We don't know. Oh, okay, President Tinubu. Now, President Tinubu is the president of Nigeria. He presides over the affairs of the country. But President Tinubu cannot be in every country. So what countries do is that they pick people to represent, the president then picks somebody to represent him in in other countries. So when you go to Ghana, you have an ambassador there. That person is representing the president of Nigeria. So if there's anything, that ambassador, because he has the status of the head of state, represent the head of state in that country, he can decide, he can move to anybody in that country. He can even ask for a meeting with the president of that country. Because at that level, he's representing the president of Nigeria. So just what the president is doing to take over. I mean, the Constitution of Nigeria says that the duty of the Nigerian government is to provide for the welfare and security of the Nigerian people, basic. And so the ambassador of Nigeria in any part of the world, his duty primarily is to take care of the welfare and security of the Nigerian in that country. So that's their duty. So it doesn't matter what kind of problem you have. It doesn't matter. Just go to the embassy to make a complaint or whatever. And that embassy has a duty. To respond. And if it's something he cannot, handle, he has to report to the foreign ministry, and the foreign ministry reports to the Nigerian government. And then action can be taken. So if you go to any country in the world, and you have any problem or any issue, and you go to the Nigerian embassy, and the ambassador or anybody does not respond well, you have a duty to report that person. And if some of us know, will demand that that ambassador must be recalled. Because that is his duty there. Otherwise, he will be in Lagos eating dodo and rice. You get it? So that is their duty, sir.
Okay, yeah, I thank you for that. But in terms of those duties, are they really playing out those roles? What can you really say about that?
Well, there are good servants and there are bad servants. You know that. I just wrote an article 2 weeks ago about a man who used to be the Nigerian ambassador in Australia, Ayolu Collin. And what inspired me more is that a Nigerian who lives in Australia, they usually try to renew their passports. And they have a lot of problems going. Sometimes they will travel from one part of Australia and then drop the passport and they are told to come back. So this man was complaining he was a lecturer. And someone said, no, there's an ambassador in Nigeria, don't forget it. You just go there and you get your passport. So the man goes with his family. The first surprise he gets is that he says, can I see the ambassador? He said, who are you? He said, I'm so, I'm from this part of Australia. And the secretary said, oh, just a minute. 1.5 minutes later, he starts to go up. So he sits down. He's telling his wife, why did they ask us to come? And somebody comes in, I'm the ambassador of Nigeria. Are you serious? High Commissioner. The man not only ensured that they got their passports, he also took them out for lunch. So they are ambassadors like that. You get it? So there are good servants and bad servants. But we have a duty to commend good servants. And we have a duty to report bad servants so that we can replace them and have a better country.
Okay, thank you. They are good servants and bad servants. Please, let's take this home. Good servants and bad servants. So, talking about Nigerian migrants abroad, how best can they, educate themselves about their rights while living in a foreign country? Because I think most times, most of them do not even know the rights they have when they live in those foreign countries. That may also be the reason why so many inhumane things are being, thrown at them. So how best can they educate themselves about their rights?
Well, it comes again to our representation in those countries. I think the Nigerian government can codify these laws, explain them, it becomes like an handbook or a pamphlet, which can be used. There also be suggestions, for instance, that in countries where you have a large number of Nigerians, like in US, in UK and co, there's no reason why you shouldn't have a desk of the Ministry of Labor. Somebody sent from Nigeria who is knowledgeable about labor laws, international labor laws, and he can be there so that when there are issues about labor, they can report to him and he can take action. Not just with the employer there, but also let the Nigerian government know what is going on. So we can do that. So it becomes like an handbook. Yes.
Okay. So thank you. You want to, okay.
To promote relationship between workers' organization here and in those countries, so that they can also provide support and information for those who are working in those other countries.
Thank you very much.
So much.
But that also implies that we have to take trade unionism serious. So that if you belong to a trade union, whether in Nigeria or abroad, and you have anything, there can be close collaboration and they can inform others. So it's possible, for instance, that if you have a problem, like somebody was just explaining to me, that when there was these attacks against Nigerians in South Africa, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, took to the streets and to protect Nigerians in those countries, even when a lot of them are informal workers. So that can be done. And there's no reason why we can't protect Ghanaians or Sierra Leoneans or Americans who are also living in Nigeria. Because at the end of the day, the basic thing that brings us together is that we are workers. We belong to one family. And like somebody used to say, workers of the country must always unite.
Insightful.
Just practically, because we talked about doctors and nurses living en masse. 20,000 workers from Nigeria and UK or US is not small. And we know we have the Nigerian North as an organization. We have the Nigerian Medical Association as an organization. They have counterpart unions in the UK, in the US. If there is some kind of bilateral between this powerful organization, a doctor in the UK who has a problem can have take it on board. So that is not just for workers at the bottom, also for workers at the top, because every country has this organization. So we need to foster that practically.
Okay, thank you. I see some hands up. So we're going to take some questions and Comrade will also respond. I see a first hand here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to add that in addition to the structured system for support, there's also the community support as well as family support. So if they can't reach out to the professional support system, they can go through those community supports to reach out to those ones and address the issue that is relevant to that person, depending on the sector of work the person belongs to. That's a strong support system for migrant workers.
Right. Thank you. I see another hand. Please pass the mic.
Good afternoon once more. I'm Ismail Idris. My first question goes this way. You say something about lecturer that went to see an ambassador and later his request was granted and they took him out for lunch. I'll tell you this for free. Go and check the profile of that lecturer. You will know better. And my second question is, you say something about if you want to see ambassador of another country and they did not grant you the access of seeing that ambassador, or he refused to answer your prayers, then you need to report him or she. Who are we to report those people to? Another question. my question here is, in our own country, how much right do we have talk more of another man's land? Why am I saying this? In our own country, you say something about freedom of movement, equal opportunity for everybody, right? If you are talking about equal opportunity for everyone, check. We that came from Nyanya as it's now, we came about 24 to 25 persons without any security escorting us. But go outside here, one person, about 20 to 30 security officers will be following that person around. Moving with their wives, moving around with their wives, carrying their bag up and down, and their children. Do we have that equal right? That is another question. Go and check. I'll tell you this for free also. Go and check. A lot of Nigerians are working in this country. You say something about we have minimum wage and living wage. Can you please tell us, is it minimum wage we're having in this country or living wage? Another question.
Okay. Comrade,
Okay,
that's a
let me allow
lot
him
of
to
questions.
attend to this
for
one.
you.
Let me allow him to attend.
Okay, so can you
Okay, let me answer
attempt
some of
to
your
take
questions.
them?
Let me answer some of the questions. Comrade, it depends on what you earn. It will determine whether you are living on your wage or you are just a minimum person. You get it? It depends. But seriously, the wages we are paid in Nigeria are minimum wages. That just ensures that the worker is alive to do the work and not to take care of his family. I said what we have is a minimum wage, not a living wage. Hello? Sorry, let's have one house, please.
Please, one house.
What we have is a minimum wage, not a living wage, not a wage you can live on. And I tell people this: you want to know what a minimum wage is. What can it buy? You get it? Okay? I remember when I was in the NLC in those days, the minimum wage was 18,000 naira. And a bag of rice was 6,500. And so with 80,000 naira that were being paid, we could buy 3 bags of rice. You get it? Now, we have moved a lot and we have improved a lot. For 18,000, we are going to 30,000 to 70,000 naira. A bag of rice a year has come down, or is coming down. I don't know whether it's true or not, but at least it's like 100K. And so if you use all your minimum wage to buy a bag of rice, then you'll be buying about 50, maybe half a bag or 3/4 of a bag. Whereas in those days you could buy confidently 3 bags. So we have problems, there's no doubt about that. You asked about who do you report to? One good thing we now have in the world is that everybody can be heard. And so if you have a problem with an ambassador or a consulate staff anywhere in the world, all you just need to do is put it on your Facebook page. So and so ambassador, so and so of this was what happened, and just leave it. You hear people say, they are idiots, so, and somebody, you will not know that somebody will dare contact him. So that can be done easily. You can report anybody, anywhere, even when you are on when you are not abroad, when you are at the roadblock, there is a problem, you can easily report the person. Now, about the ambassador, you see, these things depend on people. The first time I left Nigeria, representing journalists, was to Spain and Cuba. In Spain, I had problems. I tried to reach the ambassador. It was some junior staff that talked to me. You get it? When I got to Cuba and I contacted the embassy, the ambassador came to look for me, and in an embarrassing manner, because I was just in one small hotel, and then there was this big Mercedes-Benz with Nigerian flag flying and security. And the man came to look for me. So I said, "Oh, God, you put me in trouble. They will think I have money." You see the difference? But it's the same Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we can do things to improve things. Like I said, there are bad workers, there are good workers. There are good servants, and there are bad servants. So help us God.
Okay. You still have questions? Okay. Very quickly, so that let's allow other people to. No, give the mic to another person.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm Emmanuel by name. So my question is in respect to the illegal migration that goes on in Nigeria. What actually is being done, or what actually is the government planning to do about that? Because the rate at which the illegal movement is now going higher than before. Like there was a case of someone just picking someone on the roadside, and the person woke up in a foreign country. There are cases of family friends or family relatives telling someone that, okay, I have a job opportunity for you, and then you end up there either as a prostitute or an underpaid house care help, and you are being maltreated. So what actually is the government trying to do about the illegal immigration? And the illegal, once you are there already, do you still have rights because you are there illegally? Will the government look at it that you didn't go there legally, so will not look at your case? I believe human rights is a fundamental right, and you also mentioned some rights, some labor rights and the rest, that even the persons who are abroad here have. So once you are there, even though you are there illegally, does that right cover you? That.
Thank you very much. I just wish I could speak for the Nigerian government, what they are doing. But unfortunately, I'm retired, like I said. I don't have any remuneration from government. But seriously, comrade, we all have a duty to ensure that things work, that the government works. Even if they don't want to, it doesn't make a difference. You get it? Because you never can say what can affect you also, and the circumstances. So we have to ensure that the government works, and even if they are doing quite some good work, even if they are, I don't know what they are doing. They can always improve on it, but that's be based on what we're doing. But what you have described about somebody waking up in another country and other things, which is possible, it's about criminality. You get it? So it doesn't matter the form the criminality comes. It doesn't matter. A criminal is a criminal. Criminality is criminality. It doesn't matter who is perpetrating it. And it does not matter who is the victim. You get it? So we all have a duty to ensure that our country works, that the policing system works, that the security system works, that things are done for our own protection. Now, as far as the United Nations is concerned, comrade, sorry, as far as the United Nations is concerned, A migrant is somebody who leaves his home, his country, and goes to another one. It doesn't matter the circumstances. It doesn't matter the nomenclature. Whether you say it's an illegal person or illegal person, it doesn't matter. And a Nigerian, no matter how he finds himself in another country, has a duty to be protected by the Nigerian government. If you take the case of some countries, they can even go to war because of one person. And that is why some countries will be very careful how they treat the nationals of some other countries. Because some countries can be very strong, but some countries might be a bit weak. You get it? But the important thing is that a human being is a human being, and that human being has a right to be protected under fundamental human rights of the United Nations. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Because in truth, for young people, particularly women, young girls, there's a big racket of people recruiting people under the guise that will get you service jobs in XYZ country, and they drag them into prostitution. So it's all over social media, radio stations. So I think the challenge is for the media. We need strong media campaign. We also need National Orientation Agency and relevant institutions in that area to sensitize our young people about the dangers of such pathways to travel. I think it's very important. We need to really step up our campaign in that area. It's really massive because there's serious unemployment and there's serious economic challenges at home. So every little opportunity, people just want to move. And people are capitalizing on that pressure to harvest young people. The other one you talk about criminality is to report them and ensure that people are there to it, because all kind of cases have organ harvesting, all kind of other criminalities are going on. But particularly for young girls, that area needs some form of awareness.
Yeah, we need a lot of awareness around that. Thank you. I see a hand here.
So good afternoon, everyone. So we were discussing yesterday with her, and it was about convicted people. Like we are discussing about this person that was convicted, and he came over to Nigeria. He had a very bad record there, and he came here and he got married. And we were saying there, if you are convicted from the police there are certain things you can't do. There are certain jobs they can't give you. There are certain things you can't do. But he came in here, and it's like he's working freely, and we might likely see this person on Nigeria and be like, oh, see Oyibo man. We don't know, and maybe he's a working time bomb, because what he did there is very bad, and he left his country and he's here. Is it that here we don't have protection policies or any of those things? Nobody to check mates what he has done, the record and all of those things. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. When you said you were discussing with your friend, I thought you were discussing about jackpot. Okay. Look, we are all human beings, and we have various challenges and various problems. It is difficult for you to see a person, the visage of a person does not tell you what he is. But we have a duty as a country to ensure that those we bring in, to check their background and records. You get it? So that when somebody applies, for visa, we have a duty to find out who is he, where is he coming from, what does he want to come and do in Nigeria, other things like that. We have to. But also, as human beings, we also have to be careful. Those we associate with. The person may not be a migrant. It may just be, anybody you meet on the streets. So we have a duty to ensure that our security system is good, and there is quick reaction if there's a problem. That's part of the thing we have. Quick reaction. If there's a quick reaction, then we can have minimal losses or injuries. I don't know whether you get, but we all have to be very careful, especially the young ones. Some of us, we don't, but for those of you who have to look for good ladies, well, you can look for bad ladies also in any case, and good men to marry. Please be very careful and know what you are going to. know the background of the person that you are going to talk with. Thank you.
Do we? Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, sir. I have two questions. You made mention of two agencies, NAPTI and MIFCOM. What are the duties of these two agencies, sir?
Thank you.
Thank you.
NAPTIP is the one that talks about human trafficking, carrying people out, young girls, young men, to go and walk outside, you know, to traffic them across borders. And so what NAPTIP does is to ensure that these things are not just like that. If I even in Nigeria, you know that a lot of children are brought from the hinterland, from various states to come and work in the cities. And some of them are not treated well. So NAPTIP is there. If a child has to run, he doesn't need to run, if you're a Sabah or whatever, to run on the streets. If you have a place, you can go to the police station, and the policeman knows that he has to contact NAPTIP to let them know that there's a crisis. You get it? So NAPTIP does that kind of work, and also internationally, to help them to come back if necessary, and also to track those criminals that run those gangs. NIFCON is a different thing. It's more like, you see, we have a lot of Nigerians outside Nigeria. Do we benefit from their absence? I mean, their presence there. How do we do it better? If you take some countries like the Philippines, a lot of their income comes from people who are outside, migrant workers, who bring their money in. In Nigeria, it's a bit informal. And so, when the man is outside there, a woman say, okay, this my people, they want to go to school, send them $100. But in some of those countries, they are structured in such a way that they can even raise capital for projects or for countries, or ensure that certain things are done. So that body does that, but it also has to work with the foreign ministry, because out there is the foreign ministry that is known, and not any other agency. So if a government outside, whether in Europe or America or Asia, is going to react to the Nigerian agency, it has to be to the foreign ministry. That is what they know.
Do you have a question?
Good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ismail Salif. You spoke about the ILO and other convention. My first question is, does this convention or this ILO covers the wages that are being paid to Nigerian migrants? That is, in essence, are those Nigerian migrants entitled to those wages that citizens in those countries they are paid? Are they entitled to those wages? And the second one is, does a migrant, that is a Nigerian migrant in other countries, can he sue individually when his right is being violated, that like the way we see in where a foreigner will come to this country and will abuse our own our citizen and so on like that? Can a Nigerian, or as an immigrant, is he individually entitled to sue in other countries? These are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The ILO was established by the League of Nations in 1919 after the First World War. And the whole idea was that part of the reasons for crisis in the world is because basic people are not being taken care of. So people become desperate. And so the attempt is, can you have an organization that will look at the welfare of human beings across the world? That was why the ILO was established. The ILO was established many years before the UN itself. You get it? So the ILO is to cover that and labor rights of people. So you have a right. Now, how does the ILO work? It works as a tripartite organization. The trade unions come, the employers come, and the government come. So three bodies. They come together. So the three bodies from Nigeria meet with the three bodies from other countries. They meet together and see what is best for the world. And then they make conventions and rules. And it becomes binding if you domesticate it, if you sign to it and you agree. And so the ILO rules affect everybody. You're talking about the minimum wage. Minimum wage is a basic convention of the ILO. Below which level you cannot pay people. You get it? So you are covered anywhere in the world by the minimum wage that is prevalent in that country. that minimum wages differ from country to country, depending on the basic social flaw, depending on the agreement amongst employers, government, and the employer. You find that in Nigeria, every 5 years, we negotiate. And maybe in the next 2 years again, we will negotiate minimum wage. That is by the Nigerian federal and state governments, by the employers, private employers, and by the workers. So these things affect you. So once you have a minimum wage in every country, whether you're a migrant or not, you're entitled to that minimum wage, given the parameters within which it is used. For instance, in Nigeria, the fact that the minimum wage is 70,000 naira does not mean that if you employ somebody, you have to pay 70,000 naira. The Nigerian law talks about the minimum number of workers that you have. On that basis, you can pay the minimum wage. So it's something that affects everybody, and everybody is protected anywhere you are in the world by those laws of the ILO, the conventions, and the UN conventions also.
Let them know that, yes, the ILO may not have the weight and the force of law, but you can also report violations on these provisions to the ILO, to the entire world, because the ILO holds a conference every year where there's opportunity. For instance, if Nigerians in UK are discriminated against in terms of pay for equal work with other nationals or Britons or whatever, the Nigerian government, through the Ministry of Labour, can say migrant workers in this country are suffering and report them to the entire world. So that way they get some form of remedy, either to change the situation and all of that. So there's somebody to cry to.
Sorry, you even asked whether they can sue. Anywhere you are in the country, yes, you can. Court can make a ruling. If, for example, you are not well treated by country A, you get it, and you come to Nigeria, you can sue that country, and we can try to get the money for you. If you come to some of us, but seriously, you can sue.
All right, thank you. Can we get questions from online participants? Please, I need the mic so that you can read out questions.
Not a problem, not Nigeria. I think it's becoming a global problem because employers are devising strategies to extract more and more from the workers without giving back. And that has led to all kinds of strategies, employment strategies, outsourcing, contract, is to manipulate the law and ensure that people put in more than 8 hours, which you said standardized hours of work for the day. And anything that is after 8 hours becomes overtime. So 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day. You do extra 2 hours, you get paid and rewarded for it. But employers are manipulating the system. But I think we concluded on a good move. It's for the workers to belong to the union. Unions are like vigilante at work. And to ensure that these provisions, whether they are national, whether they are global, are respected by employers. So that's why one of the key ILO conventions that is relevant even to our right as migrant workers is that 87 and 98. About the right to belong to the union and to have opportunity for collective bargaining. Because we are not workers if we can't have that power of talking about what affects us. So it starts from there, belonging to the unions and being able to negotiate. And employers are really increasingly pushing back on that side. So we need to de-energize the youth.
Okay, thank you everyone, but we have to end this section now because we need to take the second presentation. It's an ongoing conversation. If we continue, we may not finish today because it's a conversation that is ongoing, and this is just the first one of the webinar series. So let's appreciate Comrade. Thank you so much for doing justice to this topic. And the paper will be shared to everyone. You get to read them and also do your research more. So thank you so much, sir. I want to invite Mrs. Remi Ihejirika, the program manager from Press Nigeria. Those who illegally migrate in terms of any eventuality in another country, will Nigeria ambassador respond to them? This is a question from online participants. Maybe you can speak to them, to this one.
The
Why?
basic answer is yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
He has a duty to do that.
He has a duty to do
Or
that.
come back home and go to his family.
Or come back home. Okay. This one says a lot of employers these days don't give offer letters. And sometimes it is hard to insist because of fear of losing the job. What can a person do in that situation? There is a B to it. Sometimes workers increase workload without increasing the remuneration. What is the best thing to do in such a situation?
Well, the first question as to letter of employment is a law in Nigeria. Section 7 of the Labour Act says that when you employ a Nigerian, you must write him a letter. And that letter will state your address, what you do, and the address of the worker. And you tell the worker what he's been employed to do, the remuneration, and other rights. So if an employer is not doing that, then it is illegal and he can go to jail because it's against the laws of Nigeria. You know, it's illegal for him to do that.
Okay.
Sorry, there was a second question.
So the other one, it says the companies increase workload without increasing the pay. What is the best thing to do in such a situation?
Well, it is called OT, overtime. You get it? And that is also why you need unions. Because if you have unions, you can structure employment in such a way that these things are taken care of, you know, including the basic workman compensation if you are sick, other things like that. So it's also part of our laws about employment. So you should have overtime. Don't forget that you have minimum hours of work across the world, and this is as far back as 1886. You know, before my grandfathers were born. You get it? Where the world has accepted that there are 24 hours in a day, and a human being can have 8 hours to do family work, eat, and other things like that, 8 hours to sleep, and 8 hours to work. So you have an 8-hour work week. I mean a day. Yeah. So every week you're not supposed to work above 40 hours. But if you have to work above those ones, then it is called overtime, and that's what we paid. There's no charity work.
Called me to speak after Comrade Owei. He's faulty, so I'm disadvantaged. But you know how you can help me is to listen. Okay. So my name is Remi Ihejirika. I work for Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. It's a German non-governmental organization. The FES in March celebrated 100 years. We have over 90, thank you. We have over 90 offices across the world. Nigeria is privileged to be among the few countries that has 2 offices. So we have an office in Lagos, a small office, and another in Abuja. And so what do we do at the FES? The FES was named after the first democratically elected president of the Republic of Germany. You know what happened after the war. And he was a craftsman, that is an ordinary worker, who rose to become the president. And he had a wish, you know, on his deathbed that donations, contributions after his death should be used to set up a foundation that will promote some of the ideals that he stood for. I said he was a craftsman, he was a worker. And so he believed in the ideals of workers' rights to joining unions, unions being able to negotiate collectively for workers and all of that. And so at the FES, we do a lot of work with trade unions. Over 50% of the work we do is with trade unions. We also do a lot of work around issues of gender. We do a lot of work on inclusiveness, supporting young people, because young people are the future. And so we know that there is a lot, that is staked against young people. So we support young people, their organizations, their quest to be heard. And then we also support democratic institutions. We support government too, because Mr. Friedrich Ebert was a Democrat. And so we give support to democratic institutions. We're also concerned about entrenching democratic ethos. So we work on migration also. And I'm going to try to do a rundown of what our work on migration involves, the success stories, and the challenges that we have had, So the FES conducts migration-related work through its African Migration Policy Center in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. We have an office there, and the core of the work is basically facilitating African and Europe dialogue on migration management, and also trying to set up multi-stakeholders platform to encourage dialogue, and creating fact-based dialogue where especially Africans' perspectives features and is brought to the table. So we also support a lot of research on African migration trends. We have a lot of resources in this dimension. We also support in the office policy frameworks that aligns with the AU. The AU Secretariat is in Addis. So we work closely with the AU. We support the policy frameworks that aligns with the AU migration policy, especially the framework for Africa from 2018 to 2030 and the SDGs. And then we also focus on diaspora engagement and development. The core of the work also involves analyzing labor migration policies, highlighting migration rights like Comrade Owei and Comrade Bello have talked about. The right for migrants, their workers, their right to belong to unions, their right to fair wages, their right to protection against discrimination, harassment, and intimidation, their general welfare. And then we have this project called the No Border to Equality Project, which recently launched a report and a website on organization working on gender issues and migration, because it's something that is very topical and important. So we offer support in that direction. And then we also engage with civil society and local actors in policy debates and support the African participation in global forums like, the Global Forum on Migration and Development. We support and sponsor, identify people who to participate in such discussions. Now, this is the core of what we do. I said earlier that for us at the FES, we work with trade unions. And so we try to link the work on migration with the trade unions. So how do we do that? We do that through, advocating for labor rights advocacy. We facilitate migration workers' rights protection by partnering with trade unions. In Southeast Asia, for example, the FES initiated a regional project to strengthen cooperation between migrant NGOs, women groups, to advocate for migrant labor rights. And then also, we also organize conferences that brings together trade unions, employers, NGOs, policymakers to address labor migration challenges, emphasizing migrants' integration and fair working conditions. This we do through multi-stakeholders dialogues, because the issue of migration is not an issue that just one person can address. Labor unions cannot address it alone. Employers can't address it alone. You need a multi-stakeholder dimension to the discourse. And we also collaborate with international labor groups like the PSI on all kinds of projects, you know, especially on projects around digital future of migrants. You know, is one of the projects that the FES has supported in addressing digitalization, the impact on labor, including migrant workers. We support also regional networks in the Mediterranean and sub-Saharan Africa, trade union networks. So we support the establishment of network for the purpose of building coalition, for the purpose of engagement, you know, of all the various stakeholders, especially to address migrant women labor rights and social protection, especially in sectors like domestic work. You know, in the sector, in domestic work, we see a lot of presence of women and migrant workers. And there is also account and issues around exploitation, harassment, and, you know, sexual harassment and what have you. We provide also, working with the union, we target working on issues around policy frameworks promoting migration policies that aligns with labor standards, you know, ensuring that trade unions contribute to frameworks that project migrant workers' rights. I've talked about their rights to fair wages, their rights to safe working conditions, you know, because you know that trade unions play a central role in shaping inclusive policies for migrant workers. What are the challenges that we face? There is a problem around policy implementation gaps. And so when we sit to discuss about policy, you know how it is. So people who discuss about policies are not the people who implement policies. You understand? So there is gaps. There are gaps. Sometimes we have observed incoherence between what is local needs and international agendas. So there is that gap, and so there is problem sometimes about implementing some of these policies. Then there is also something that we need to talk about, you know, and I'll call it a restrictive migration policies, especially by some countries, especially in the EU, you know. There are issues around border closures, you know. So countries have their policies, and there's nothing you can do about it, you know. And then also in our work with trade unions, we have found out that trade unions sometimes have some limitations. The work of trade unions is to represent workers, is to organize workers, is in that order. Organize workers, represent them, collectively bargain for them, defend them. That's the core work of trade unions. And so when you now throw into the mix the issue around migration, you understand? So it's you stretch resources, human resources. So there are sometimes issues around capacities of the trade unions to take on this challenge. But what we have also done is that we have tried to help to build capacities. In the NLC, there is now a migration desk manned by somebody who is being capacitated so that these issues can be addressed, you know. So also, we have found out that sometimes the trade unions lack tools, you know, to address especially issues around digitalizations, you know, and some of the challenges that migrant workers face. Also, we know that globally, there is rising anti-migrant sentiments, you know, in some destination countries. So this makes it very difficult to work. And then there are barriers. There are economic and environmental barriers that can hinder the work that we do. Like in countries with low wages, you know, and poverty, it fuels emigration. People want to leave, is a push factor, you know. And so migration policies sometimes fail to address them. And then the big one is the issue around fund. We know that globally there is economic recession. There is also moving of funds from some project area to other, you know, areas that are of top priority, so to say. So the issue of funds is something that we contend with. So it could limit what we are doing, you know, and how far we can go with the project on migration. So those are our challenges. The success, I just wanted to say that we've been able through this project to raise awareness on migration, especially within the trade unions. We've been able to promote dialogue among stakeholders, and then also I talked about our ability to conduct research to help in building a resource base, you know, and using such research findings as input into policy discussions. In short, that is what the FES project on migration is all about. But you can read about it on the web. You can go to our office in the website of the office in Addis. They have a lot of information there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Please, let's appreciate FES. It's interesting to hear about the work of FES Nigeria and also the work they do globally. Do we have any question or any comment? We'll just take two here, just two. And when you are asking, please go straight to the point. Don't have
heard anything about the one critical issue that migrants face abroad, which is the issue of racial discrimination. So what has FPS done so far?
Do we have another? You have a question.
Question. She said something about trade union, and their objective is to fight for workers and to fight for the rights of workers and migrants, right? My question here is, there is a saying in my own side that says, the name you name your dog, that is the name people will call the dog. Why am I saying this? Check out the trade union here we have in Nigeria and the labor here. For instance, people working for banks, bankers. We have a lot of bankers that are working, people that are working for bank, but majority of them are just, 80 to 90% of them are just contract staff. So after working for some time, before getting to the level that they will permanent them, they will just do away with them. So my question here is, if you are punishing people within your country like this, how can you now fight for those who has gone outside the country to work? If you cannot protect those who are working under your watch here, how can you now protect those who are working outside? Because if you listen to radio station, you will see a lot of people working for foreign companies here. You will see a lot of inhuman treatment they are giving them. And the government are not doing anything. The laborers are not doing anything about that. The trade union, they are not doing anything about that. This is in our own country. Talk more of another man's land. So my question is, what are the trade union and the laborers doing about all of this? Thank you. Just do away with them. So my question here is, if you are punishing people within your country like this, how can you now fight for those who has gone outside the country to work? If you cannot protect those who are working under your watch here, how can you now protect those who are working outside? Because if you listen to radio station, you will see a lot of people working for foreign companies here. You will see a lot of inhuman treatment they are giving them. And the government are not doing anything. The laborers are not doing anything about that. The trade union, they are not doing anything about that. This is in our own country. Talk more of another man's land. So my question is, what are the trade union and the laborers doing about all of this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start with my brother, who talked about the issue of contract work and what are the unions doing. Now, let me say this. I used to work with the unions. I worked with the bank union in the 1990s. And what happened in the 1990s? In the 1990s, government privatized the banks. And then the issue around contract work started creeping in. In the banks, we used to have permanent employment. But because of government policies, because of privatization, and all kinds of employers' tactics of dodging expenses on workers, so they introduced contract staff. They introduced seasonal workers to reduce cost on workers. In the union then, we tried to talk to people in the banks, the big banks, and the second generation banks, Oceanic Bank, Afri Bank, you know all those banks. They refused to join the union. And what happened? The issue around joining of union is about volunteerism. You cannot force people. So the union can come to canvass, can come to talk to you. The decision to join lies on the worker. They refuse to join union. And then employers in their ways would come at the end of the year, sack a whole lot of them. I remember one year, they were practically sleeping in front of our office. And we said, you are not union members. We cannot defend you. But you know, because also as union people, your responsibility is to workers. So we will write. But the employers will tell you, they are not your members. So the issue is this. The employers will try to discourage workers from joining the union. We need to, the unions, Comrade Bello has left. This comrade is a comrade. The unions need to push the union agenda more. You understand? Canvas for more people to join the union. It's only when you people join unions that you can defend them. So if they are not under union coverage, the union cannot do so much. In Nigeria, the union density is still very low. And we have like the best kind of labor laws in Nigeria that encourages unionization. But don't forget also that employers won't want workers to join the unions. What we have even seen from my interaction with the NLC is that Nigerians who are entrepreneurs, who own businesses, are even worse employers of labor than foreigners. They will not allow their workers to join the union. They will not allow union representation and coverage. So we need, it's two ways. So workers also need to understand that it's their right to join the union. It's your right as a worker. So you find out, you ask, you know, then the unions also need to also push union agenda, need to sell union agenda to workers. So that's how I will respond to that. Number two, the issue around racial discrimination, like you said, we spoke here about the work. The whole discussion is about the rights of migrants. The rights of migrants will cover this kind of discrimination. The right to fair wages, the right to safe working conditions, the right to join union, the right to be saved from harassment, intimidation, oppression, forced labor. Those were all the things that comrades talked about. So even racial discrimination comes under the right to be protected against racial discrimination. It's part of the rights of the migrant. So it's important to know and to emphasize that migrants have rights, whether they are in their home countries or they are elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please, let's appreciate. I want to check, do we have any question from online participants? No? Any question? I want to give a lady the last opportunity to speak because I don't know what's going on.
Why?
My ladies, what's happening? You want to say something? Okay, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Maureen Ovie. I want to address the issue he raised. In addition to the earlier question directed at Comrade Owei, that first question asks that what a worker, he or she is not given a formal written letter of employment. That is one. You also mentioned that things are happening in the country. Nigerian workers are not. What is the government doing about it? That things are happening worse here than out there. If they're not taking care of their workers here, how would they do with those outside? I just want to point this to our attention that it is the primary function of Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment to protect workers in their workplaces. So often than not, if they are not aware, how else do you expect them to sort out their problems? One thing I want to assure you is that there's confidentiality when you make such reports. Let the ministry come into it. Go to the nearest labor office and make your reports. And I'll assure you that it will be taken care of. I have handled several cases. Some get to us through online means, and we go there, intervene to ensure that the right of that worker is protected. So I would not agree with you that the ministry is not doing that. They are doing that. And that is why labor officers go out on inspection often to see what is happening. Yes, at times you might get there, it could be doctored. So, but when there are such incidences, it is your duty to report it to the ministry. Then secondly, I want to address the issue of a worker not given a written form of a letter of employment. There are correspondences between you and that employer, digital or otherwise. Please document it. Such digital evidence, they are admissible. So if it's WhatsApp chat, SMS, or whatever. And secondly, invite a labor official to do the needful. And when investigations are carried out, they will ensure that the employer does the necessary thing by giving the workers the letter of employment. Thank you.
Please, let's appreciate Mrs. Remi. Yes. So, thank you so much. You are not clapping well. Clap now. Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Remi, for those insightful things to get to know about what FES is doing in Nigeria and also globally. With that, we have actually rounding up. But like I said, it's an ongoing conversation because 1 hour is not enough to have to discuss all of this. I know they have a lot of things to say and, but we'll keep talking about them, continue to create awareness and enlighten people about the rights of migrant workers and also understanding the laws and the policies as it were. So I want to call on Maureen Ovie, the head of Migrant Resource Centre, Lagos, to give us the closing remark. Please, let's clap as she's coming.
Thank you very much. Once again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We want to appreciate you, participants that have been here since. Please give yourself a round of applause, sitting patiently through. We truly appreciate you. I want to say thank you to our online participants too for joining us throughout this period of insightful knowledge gaining. I want to say thank you to our speakers, Comrade Owei Lakemfa, and our second speaker, Mrs. Remi Ihejirika. We want to say thank you very much for the insights we have gained. And I believe that we came here with not knowing some of these things, but we are going back better, and we're going to apply it. We also want you to know that we are here for you. Just reach out if you have any challenge, and hopefully we'll meet your needs. We want to appreciate our partners and co-sponsors, Sandra Vermutin, Head of Program, GIZZME. We say thank you for bringing this together. Wale, the communication head, GIZ, we appreciate you too. I want to say thank you to all my colleagues from Ministry of Labor and Job Center. When you see NELEX, don't be NELEX is just Job Center of the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment. So that is why we are here partnering with our GIZ colleagues. So I want to say thank you, Samson, the head of MROC in Benin, Joanne, Chineye, and BC. We appreciate you all. And I know that we'll go back home and be better informed to act and take decisions that will affect us positively. Once again, we appreciate every one of you, and safe journey back to your respective destinations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, let's clap. Let's appreciate them too. Thank you, everyone. So we have to, where are we taking the group photo? Here or downstairs? So we have to go downstairs to take a group photo.